It looked wrong. Chunky receiver. Big ugly magazine hump. Crude stamped metal and a wooden stock that seemed cobbled together in a backyard. It didn't photograph well. It didn't win beauty contests. But in the steaming knife-edged fight of the Pacific, it did something every glossy, famous submachine gun could not. It worked. Reliably. Often when everything else failed. This is the story of the Owen Gun, Australia's rough little miracle. A weapon born of necessity that quietly outclassed Allied designs when the war moved from European streets to tangled jungle. When World War II exploded across the globe, the Allies marched into a world their equipment hadn't been designed for. European battlefields demanded different tools than the humid, thicket hell of New Guinea and Borneo. British Stens jammed with mud. Thompsons were heavy and thirsty for oil and rare parts. Their magazines failed in wet scrub. Their complicated actions froze with grit. Australian units found themselves saddled with weapons that made sense on European streets. Not in a landscape where a single rainstorm could turn a soldier's rifle into a useless lump of rust and sand. What soldiers in the Pacific needed was simple. A light, robust, easily maintained submachine gun that could fire plenty of lead in close quarters, be stripped and cleaned in minutes, and keep working when the jungle got personal and filthy. That requirement would produce something ugly and legendary. At the heart of the story was a quiet, stubborn mechanic named Eric Lachlan Owen. He worked in Melbourne, not for a famous armory, but in a machine shop where practical solutions came before blueprints. Owen was not a showman, he was a maker. He watched the reports from New Guinea, watched men come back with jammed weapons and missing fingers, and he sketched a machine gun simple enough that a farmer could fix it with a hammer. Owen built a prototype in 1941-42. It looked homemade because it kind of was. What mattered was the function. The receiver was robust, the bolt ran low and true in a heavy channel to resist dirt, the magazine feed was simple and reliable, and the weapon's balance made it excellent at hip and point shooting, vital in the close chaos of jungle fighting. Trials weren't conducted on polished ranges but in the mud. Australian soldiers and officers took Owen's prototypes to the scrub, to gun ranges where the tests were brutal by design. Mud, rain, grit, constant firing. The Owen gun choked where others failed and kept firing where others gave up. Its secret was deceptively simple. Keep the action protected and keep the feed straightforward. A top-mounted magazine and a very straight feed path reduced the number of things that could go wrong. The bolt had mass and momentum, pushing through grime rather than stalling. Parts were stamped and welded, cheap to produce and easy to maintain, a conscious rejection of elegance in favor of reliability. The gun looked homemade. It didn't wear the pedigree of a European manufacturer. But the jungle doesn't care about pedigree. It only accepts what works. And men who returned with Owen guns had stories. They returned more often. By 1943, Australian commando units in New Guinea, along with British Commonwealth forces, began to receive the Owen in numbers. Immediately, patterns changed. Patrol reports that once read, ambushed, heavy casualties began to show fewer killed and more enemy bodies on the ground. The Owen's close-quarters firepower gave soldiers an edge in trails and village fights where a quick, controllable burst decided a firefight. The gun was especially valuable for last-ditch fighting, landing zones, clearing jungle bunkers, close patrol contacts. Soldiers learned to trust its balance and its trigger. It was forgiving under recoil, fast and follow-up shots. A gunner could fire full automatic at short range and still keep it on target. In a fight measured in meters, that mattered more than good looks, better optics, or a fancy name. What made the Owen stand out wasn't just the mechanics but the philosophy behind it. It assumed no perfection from its user. You could throw it in a foxhole, leave it in mud for a day and still take it apart and run it after a minute. Parts were robust and readily produced by local industry. Its simplicity meant more guns could be made faster and repaired in the field when supply lines were strained. Commanders began to notice. Reports from junior officers flowed upward. The Owen outperformed Stens and Thompsons in company scenarios. Troops asked for them. Loyalty formed, not to a brand but to a companion that worked when everything else seemed to conspire against life. Stories spread, often in the quiet, exaggerated fashion of soldiers' lore. That an Owen could be buried in mud and still fire. That a man could drop it in a creek and keep going without losing rhythm. That the weapon had its own kind of faith, mechanical, stubborn, utterly uninterested in excuses. Some of the lines grew long in the telling. But the kernel was true. In the jungle where parts were scarce and rescue uncertain, reliability wasn't luxury, it was survival. The defining test came during a New Guinea patrol where a small Australian force blundered into a concealed Japanese position. The ambush was brutal. grenades, machine gun crossfire, the kind of chaos that eats men. An Owen gunner, pinned but alive behind a fallen log, swung his ugly weapon into the only gap he could find and began to pour controlled bursts along the enemy line. Where other weapons had failed earlier on that patrol, the Owen fed, fired, and held. The gunner's bursts bought time, seconds that turned into a gap, a scramble, a withdrawal that cost lives but not the company. When the smoke cleared, the patrol still had its wounded, its dead, and crucially its survivors. The ugly gun had done what the beautiful guns could not. It simply kept working. That day the Owen stopped being a curiosity and became a tool trusted with lives. After that firefight in New Guinea, word spread faster than any official memo ever could. Frontline troops began asking, no, demanding, the Owen gun. Men who had lost friends to jam Stens and Thompsons now refused to fly without the ugly Australian. At first, Allied command resisted. The weapon didn't look professional. It didn't come from a major arms factory, didn't have a polished finish, didn't even fit the idea of modern warfare. But the jungle didn't care about appearances, and neither did the men fighting in it. What mattered was this: the Owen fired when wet, when clogged, when filthy. In a war where men died because their gun hesitated, the Owen's ugliness was its armor. The Owen gun was built for chaos. It didn't just tolerate mud and rain, it thrived in them. Engineers later noted that its internal design was genius in its simplicity. The top-mounted magazine fed gravity-assisted rounds into a straight bolt line. The recoil spring was sealed inside a tube, away from dirt and grime. Spent cartridges ejected from the bottom, letting water and filth fall away naturally. It didn't need to be cleaned every day. It didn't rust as fast as others. And it didn't punish a soldier for crawling through the jungle on his belly. When one test pitted the Owen against the British Sten and the American Thompson under combat conditions, the results were almost embarrassing. The Sten jammed again and again. The Thompson, while powerful, choked when packed with grit. The Owen? It just kept firing. After that, there was no more argument. The ugly gun wasn't just good, it was better than anything the Allies had. By 1944, Australian units in the Pacific had become fiercely loyal to their Owens. It was light, easy to control, and its rate of fire, roughly 700 rounds per minute, made it devastating in ambushes. When World War II ended, the Owen should have been remembered as one of the great submachine guns of the era. But like most unsung weapons, it faded quickly. Factories shut down production. New, sleeker weapons like the Sterling and the F-1 replaced it. Even in Australia, the government turned its focus to newer projects. But the men who had carried it never forgot. Veterans spoke of how the gun saved them, of nights when the air was so thick with rain that nothing mechanical should have worked, and yet the Owen spat out its defiance without pause. It was ugly, yes. But in the jungle, ugly meant survival. What made the Owen's legacy truly strange was how long it lasted. It didn't die with World War II. It fought again in Korea. Again in Vietnam. Australian and New Zealand troops carried updated Owens through rice paddies and rainforests, and the reports remained the same: reliable, accurate, never jammed. It was replaced only when technology finally caught up, when precision machining and sealed components could do cleanly what Owen's rough metal once did through brute simplicity. Yet even then, some soldiers resisted. They trusted the gun that looked like a pipe with a trigger. The truth about the Owen isn't just about engineering, it's about perspective. Wars are usually defined by the glamorous, sleek aircraft, noble rifles, shining tanks. But the weapons that truly change outcomes are the ones nobody wants to look at. The Owen embodied a dark lesson, that beauty and efficiency rarely live together in war. It didn't look heroic. It didn't look modern. It looked desperate. And that's exactly why it worked, because it was born from desperation, not design philosophy. It was the weapon of a nation cut off, fighting in a theater where help came late and resources were thin. And from that struggle, it gave the world a masterpiece that never sought fame. Today, surviving Owen guns sit in museums and private collections. They're scratched, dented, often coated in the same mud they were built to fight through. But every mark tells a story, of men who trusted an ugly machine more than anything else in their hands. Of a nation that built something the rest of the world didn't take seriously until it was too late. It's easy to forget the Owen because it doesn't fit the romantic image of war. But if history teaches anything, it's this: the most effective weapons aren't the prettiest. They're the ones that do their job when everything else breaks. If you want to hear more stories like this, about forgotten weapons, hidden innovations, and the soldiers who trusted them, help us out with subscribing. Because behind every legendary victory lies a tool nobody expected to work. And a story that refuses to die.